To be with Wrapup and special enrollment period for APA. Today, our webinar is on branding and identity, and it's a style guide orientation for the new Action for Health Justice logo and brand. And today, we have AJ Titong, communications specialist at the APIAHF forum, who has actually, from concept to delivery, headed up this process and given us our beautiful logo that you see before you. So the format of today's webinar will be that I'm going to turn it over to AJ soon. She'll walk us through the orientation, and then we'll open it up for question and answer. So let's get started. AJ, welcome. Thanks so much for sharing with us today.
Thank you, Bonnie, for the introduction. So before we get started, let's go over some minor logistics. All participants are automatically muted by the webinar administrators. Throughout the webinar, you may type in your questions under the questions feature box, and we will answer as many questions as we can towards the end of the presentation. And lastly, the Action for Health Justice Branding and Identity Orientation webinar will be on the Health Forum's YouTube channel next week, or it might be up sometime later this week at youtube.com/APIAHF. Yeah, without a dot. And if you haven't already received it this morning, I sent out some documents regarding the style guide itself and two attachment folders for a black and white version of the logo and then a color version of the logo. And I will go over how to download those documents today. Okay. So why use the style guide? A style guide provides a means of documenting basic rules or features that will allow you to ensure consistency in your output. And it makes you print documents and makes your website look and read consistently, translating to a better user experience, higher usability, ultimately fulfills a website's goals more effectively. So ideally, the style guide is basically your dictionary, your API style guide, your MLA, whatever you've used in college to kind of write your papers, but it should help you give a general idea of how to use the logo, what kind of color treatments you can use in some of the documents you create, and what sort of typefaces and how you can sound during or when you write out copy or content for the documents or speaking engagements you attend. So I want to go over some ways to misuse the AHJ logo. Over here you see it's a little distorted, it looks a little skinnier. That is not an appropriate way of using the logo. The next one, you can see resources has been included within the logo, and that's basically once you change the logo, it becomes a different brand. Another example is putting the logo inside a box, creating an outline around the logo, like you see here, adding or changing colors of the logo. Even though the structure of the logo is still the same, you want to maintain the original colors of the logo. And lastly, don't put a logo in a frame because it looks like it's part of the logo as well. So these are a couple of examples of how not to use the logo. Here, the proper use of the logo is to make sure that there's this right upward direction around the border. These 5 pillars, which do represent what the Action for Health Justice means, is actually our 5 goals. The rising arc, which is in yellow. The name of the brand, Action for Health Justice, and right here on the bottom, which is very important, it says Proud Member. And this is the logo that you all will be using when you create documents or you want to co-brand with your branding documents that you already have. Again, this is the proper use of it. So a lot of times people ask me, well, how do we not mess up the logo when we import it into Microsoft Word or PowerPoint? So a tip here is to resize your logo, hold the Shift key down, and then click and drag the corner of the boxes with your mouse on it. That way it's all proportional and you won't smush it, make it taller, or make it look weird on different sides. To lay out your logo, if you have text, for example, on your page, you don't know how to control the logo on that page because there's so much text, you actually just have to import the logo, right-click the logo, and then under Format Picture, you'll be able to change the logo to be on the front, in front of your text, behind the text, on a single line, and so on. So there are different features for you to be able to control that. So all you have to do is do the right-click motion and click on Format Picture. How to position the Action for Health Justice logo. So generally, the position of the logo must appear at the top left corner of a printed document with a minimum of a ½ space between the edge of the printed document or from the start of the margin. The reason why we want this ½ space is so that when you're printing something or stapling something, it doesn't hit the logo and it interferes with the name of the logo. If you're co-branding, we highly suggest that you stick to your original branding. So this is actually an example of the Health Forum's letterhead. And we've taken the Action for Health Justice Proud Member logo and we stuck it in the bottom right-hand corner of the page. And so generally, if you already have something that is your organization's original branding and it has a logo that's already prominent at the top or somewhere, just put the Proud Member logo at the bottom right corner. And so we get to colors. There are 3 main colors in the logo, and in this diagram I've shown what colors and what codes they refer to. So CMYK, which is a top code for each of the colors, is a color code that is usually used for print documents. And then the RGB code, which you'll more commonly use on Word documents, on PowerPoint, on websites, is on the bottom of the code. So each of these codes can be used, and they are the direct colors of the logo itself. So a few color setting tips. RGB color settings are better used on Microsoft Word and PowerPoint. So anything that you view on a monitor, it's better to use the RGB color settings. With CMYK, color settings are better used on design programs such as Adobe InDesign or Illustrator. And this is because printing on a printer versus looking at something on the screen develop different colors in different ways. And so those different color settings do make it different. How do you change the colors on Microsoft Word or on PowerPoint? Seems very basic. Some folks don't know how to do this, but it's actually not that tricky. If you go under the color icons on your Microsoft Word and you look at the different colors, you'll have theme colors, standard colors, that's part of your theme, and then recent colors used. If the colors aren't already set up over here, which they most likely won't be if you're creating a document yourself, go to the selection that says More Colors. And when you hit that selection, you'll come to this screen and it'll say Standard. It'll have a Standard tab and then it'll have a Custom tab. Under the Custom tab, I would suggest you punch in one of the RGB codes that I showed you all earlier in the different colors of the template. And so within the style guide, you'll get an idea of what these colors are, but there will also be supplementary colors or additional colors that you can use if you're designing something. So the next component of the style guide will be typography. Within the logo itself, the typefaces used is Century Gothic, and within the body text of a lot of the documents that we're using for AHJ, we're using Arial. And the reason why I've chosen these 2 typefaces is because they're the most commonly used typefaces, and they're the easiest ones to be accessed. Within the style guide, if you do not have these logos, there will be a link that directly shows you where the download is. So again, please remember the logo typeface is Century Gothic and the body text is Arial. Sometimes when you're doing headings or titles, it's better to use the logo typefaces, and when you're doing body text, it's better to use the body text typeface, which is Arial. And again, you don't have to stick to the regular Arial typeface. You can change the typeface to be Arial Narrow, or you can have an oblique to it, underline it and whatnot to bring more call attention to whatever your document is. So the next part of the style guide kind of goes over file formats, and I go over what EPS is, what the extensions EPS, PNG, JPEG, and other extensions are. But I just wanted to give a brief example of the differences between the different image formats. And so when you're putting in the logo into a document, I would consider these two different formats. So PNG is a design format where the background of the image is actually transparent. So there won't be a white background. And you could actually put the image in front of other color images, but I would be careful about that. In any case, you can tell the difference here. With the JPEG, this is what happens when there's a white background to an image, which usually is for the JPEG illustrations. The illustrations will be the drawings itself, but it'll always have like some type of color in the background, like light. And when you put that JPEG within a document, sometimes there's a distracted color or background to each of the lines within the image or the illustration. So I would stay away from using the JPEG. PNG is generally a good format to use when you are creating PowerPoint presentations or putting something on the website, or you need to include the logo with other images. For example, if you want to do charts and stuff, it won't interfere with any of the other images you're using. So again, PNG is great for images that are used for the website. JPEGs are generally better if they're smaller images like icons and whatnot. If you are using EPS, like you're designing a poster through Illustrator or InDesign, you can access this file format and it'll give you the actual colors, the lines, and you can change the lines as well. But we advise you not to do that with the logo. EPS versions just allow you to have vector style, which means you can make the logo as big or as small as you want without it being distorted. PNGs and JPEGs are more bitmap, which means they will be pixelated and they can only be a certain size. And I've saved all the logos to 300 dpi, which is the general setting for any publication use. So the next part is how to download the document. So within the style guide, there's a section that says download documents, the download templates, and here you can actually click onto the actual style guide itself, the different logos, so you can access the color folder, the black and white folder, and in each of those folders you will have an EPS, a JPEG, and a PNG version of the logo. And then next we have the presentation template. So if you're doing any PowerPoints, you can definitely start off by using this PowerPoint template. It looks very similar to what I'm using right now. You don't have to stick to it generally, but I do advise you to stick to the Century Gothic heading, and then the typefaces, the body typeface of your presentation to be Arial. And then again, as you can see on the outline of the template itself, there's the colors that relate to the logo itself. And then lastly, there is a Action for Health Justice map. So this map actually illustrates, I actually don't have it in this presentation, but you can access it through the style guide. But it illustrates every state that all of our partners are in doing ACA work. And so it's a very helpful guide. It also shows the population of AAs and NHPIs in each of those states. And it's there for your use. So here's a downloadable link to that as well. Also in the style guide, you'll see at the very end of the document, there's going to be a list by state and by national organization what partners are involved or are members of the Action for Health Justice, just as a reference. Again, this clicks to the actual Dropbox itself where you can download the document. So once you click on the links that we saw earlier, you can, so this is actually the page. So you can download it over here, which is very basic and to the point. Sorry, let me get back. Okay. Sorry about that. Okay, so the next part, after you've learned how to download from Dropbox, kind of go over why we use a Proud Member logo. So you'll notice here that the title Proud Member is on the bottom of the logo. The reason why we did this is because the brand does not replace an organization's original brand, and it may be used to supplement any ACA-related work that each Action for Health Justice partner is working on. So by using this logo, you're kind of showing that, you know, your organization is part of this collaborative that does this kind of work, and it's almost like a seal of approval. If a partner chooses to co-brand ACA material with Action for Health Justice, it is advised that they maintain the original branding style and use the Proud Member logo. The logo should be placed at the bottom right-hand corner again on the page of the ACA material that is being published, and then you can see examples of how this is done within the style guide. So one of the important sections of the style guide is the brand voice and other terms. So what is the brand voice? The brand voice is basically what you sound like. Not necessarily the tone, but more so figuratively. So how you sound and how you outreach, or how you sound in when you're sending a tweet or a Facebook message, how you sound when you're presenting to other people, trying to let them know what ACA is about, when you go out to those events, those town halls, when you create collateral and anything that you put on your website. Anything that is written, that you say in public, that you share in writing, that is the voice of your brand. And so this is one of the important parts of the style guide. So within the style guide, the Action for Health Justice editorial voice is strong, trustworthy, and caring. The brand is, it's a brand of AA and NHPA communities that the AA and NHPA community can rely on, feel safe and confident about. And the editorial voice seeks to foster a family-like connection between these communities and the Action for Health Justice brand. So whenever you're developing that kind of written content for any collateral like a flyer or something on your presentation, keep these concepts in mind. You want to make sure that families can relate to whatever you develop. We want to make sure that our communities can understand. And going back to that, our communities come from various cultural backgrounds, and it's important that the Action for Health Justice voice is written in a simple and understandable way. All health policy language must follow a brief one-sentence description or be written out before introducing an abbreviated term. So, for example, before you use the term CBO, you would say community-based organization, parentheses, CBO, and then a description of what community-based organizations are. So there's a list of terms within the style guide that will kind of give you a description and some ideas of how you can write it and introduce those terms to people who may not be familiar with them. So other terms, for example, are healthcare.gov related terms such as eligibility, marketplace, exchanges, and all of that will be written within the style guide. And if you all have other terms that we commonly use that's not listed, please bring it back to us so that we can include it within the style guide. So, getting closer to wrapping up, a little more about the style guide. So the Action for Health Justice Branding and Identity Style Guide is a working document. It's a fairly new brand, so we're always constantly developing materials and new concepts for the work that we're doing, and so the style guide will be periodically updated with the changes, and everybody will be notified, and there will be updated links to the style guide online. So we're going to leave it to questions. You can type in your questions, and we can answer them for you. So I'll give you about a minute to think about your questions and type them up. And then if not, here's my contact information at the bottom. I'll be kind of the lead on answering questions, updating the style guide, and all that kind of stuff.
Right. So folks, thank you, AJ, and thanks for offering your contact information. It's listed on the slide in front of you, and we'll also include it in the follow-up email when we send out the link. Are there any questions right now about anything in the presentation or anything else about branding and the identity for Action for Health Justice? So there aren't any more questions at this time. I want to, again, thank AJ for all of her work that she's done on making the AHJ brand exist, and then also on her ongoing support to make sure that as we do our work, we're considering the part of our work that builds our identity and our voice. And I think what she said about, in particular, about it being a safe and accurate voice is very important as we build out our reputation.